Today, I'm joined by Dr. Carrie Graham, who's got a PhD in adult and works-based learning. This was one of those conversations which I thoroughly enjoyed. Like, Carrie and I have a very similar vision. We help people to achieve similar goals of reducing stress, of about getting other people to do your work for you effectively and efficiently. But she comes about it from an academic and incredible years of experience in coaching, adult learning in businesses, small and larger businesses, about developing training programs that actually work, training programs that get the information out of your head and into other people's heads so they can do the work, and how to communicate in a way that engages people so they actually do the training and then implement it because they've understood it. This was nothing about creating boring PowerPoint slides or workshops that just basically bore people to sleep. It was the opposite. It was about how to tell education through stories, through ways to actually engage people at a level that they understand, and therefore they can learn quickly and apply that to your benefit as the business owner. I truly believe this is an episode you will get as much benefit and enjoyment from listening to it as I did recording it. And do stay to the end, because Carrie shares one of the best versions of what success means to you that I've heard ever on this podcast. Hope you enjoy. So the question is this: how do entrepreneurs like us, who don't have an endless supply of cash, how do we leverage the best apps, virtual assistants, automation tools and systems to scale our businesses, increase our profits, and have more time to do what we love to do each day? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answer. My name's Dr. Steve Day, and this is Systemize Your Success. Dr. Graham, I am so excited about this conversation. There's just sometimes I get guests that come on and I read what you do and what you're about, and then I learn a bit more about you. And I just took your quiz as well just to prepare for this, to find out how do you attract your clients. And I think we are truly aligned in what we're trying to do, but I think we probably approach it in a slightly different way. So that, I think, makes for a brilliant conversation. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Steve. I agree. I've listened to the podcast, and yeah, we're in for a great conversation in terms of what we do that's similar and our different perspectives.
Yeah, and I was just mentioned before we came on live, like the guests I love to get on, the people I say, yeah, definitely, there's no question here. The people that I'm pretty confident I'm going to learn a lot from, because that is one of the things I love doing more than anything, which fits very nicely into what you do. So let's kick off. Tell everyone what you actually do, how you got there, why this is the work that you've chosen to do in the world today.
Yeah, I again, thank you so much for having me. I work with small and medium-sized businesses to ultimately improve their overall organizational culture and operations. And that's a lofty goal. I acknowledge that, but the way that I do that is through training development. So I look at the infrastructure of the training program. Does it even exist, for that matter? How closely is it aligned to the values, and are the organizational values embedded throughout the training infrastructure? So that's the work that I do, and it has been quite the evolution. I started in my career in sports medicine and became, and we were saying earlier that those skills are the ones that I use on a daily basis, even though that was 30 years ago. And then I was a faculty member, so understanding how to develop programs, how to develop using best practices. Around curriculum development. And my PhD is in adult learning and workplace learning. And so that's I'm middle-aged, right? I'm middle-aged. And so working with business decision makers, those are my people. And but offering a different perspective in learning how to do their work better it sits at my core. And it's been such a joy.
Fantastic. And the reason that I resonate with this so much is because what you're trying to do, just totally oversimplify it, is get stuff out of people's heads that's locked in there, that's a risk to the business if people walk out.
Yep.
Create something that is easily adoptable, understood, actually done, and actually be holding people accountable for doing that so that they improve in their work,
Yeah.
which kind of is exactly what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
And I approach this through the philosophy of systems,
Yeah.
of documentation, of creating SOPs, of like that sort of angle of training. And
Yeah.
I also have a coaching program, so I train people to train people. So there's
Yeah.
so many similarities in what we do. And one
Yeah.
of the things that I have spent some time doing, obviously through education, you're exposed to stuff, but about instructional design and about actually how do you create content that people actually want to watch, that actually and actually when they do watch it,
Wow.
they understand it and then they can apply it.
Yeah.
So that is definitely a work in progress for me. So I think I'm a
Yeah.
long way down the line on this. I'd love to know your takes. So like when you're designing, maybe it's the meta, it's the training for the trainers or even the training itself. Like how do you bring in those best practices for instructional design that really you notice have made an impact in the kind of people that we're talking about?
Yeah. So I'll preface what I'm going to say by it doesn't matter who the individual is. So whether it's other trainers, corporate leaders, entrepreneurs, teams, right? Your in-house team. And I say that I make this next statement with love. It is not about you, right? So when you are creating, facilitating, designing, it's not about you and it shouldn't be about you. It should be about the user, the learner, and not so much as what is plastered across social media and online around hacks and oh they need auditory something to listen to, something to look at, something to do. Like that is a very simplistic view of design and as well as facilitation. But the work that I leverage stems from adult learning theory. And so when you make the content about about the user, right? You've automatically grabbed their attention. And so I know people are listening and I see the look on your face like, well, how do you do that? One of the most impactful ways to do that is to ask them or understand who they are from a life perspective. What's going on in their life? Are they middle-aged individuals who are one almost an empty nester, but as well as a carer for their parents? And so it's understanding what their social responsibilities are, as well as work-related responsibilities are, and integrating that into the training as an opener, as a way to get them interested and motivated. Because when we are motivated and interesting in something, even if it's hard to understand, we'll stick with it a little bit longer. And one of the ways to ask what people are thinking is, well, what's your opinion on this topic? Before we get started, what's your opinion on digging a ditch or on integrating AI? So that's the first way. And you alluded to this. The second way, it's focuses on building that system. So what is the system as the facilitator and designer? What system are you using to build the content? And the content should be built on the user's capacity to understand. So, Steve, we both have that a medical um, healthcare background. And I'm sure you can remember that sitting in a workshop with a researcher, and the topic is the only thing that they ever live, breathe, and study. And they're doing a presentation and you were like, yeah, I was with them up 5 minutes and then they've lost me. It's the same thing. How are you building comprehension of the information so that people actually get it? And then once they get it, the goal is to not stop, but to help them apply it. And one of the best ways to help people apply what they've learned is to build their confidence. And that's where a lot of businesses, whether it's at the corporate level or the entrepreneurs that are sharing their information, they just share it and it stops. The experience stops. They don't focus on building people's confidence to actually apply it.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. And just to lean into my experience of getting this very wrong and slowly improving things, like one of the key things that I introduced into some of our training programs was this idea of a review request, which is a word I struggle to say. But it's like whenever you are going through like this is for me training, like for my clients rather than for the staff, but same thing still applies. It's like uh, have key milestones where they'll actually doing something and then getting some immediate or asynchronous but immediate feedback on it,
Yeah.
like you
Yeah.
say, and then being able to then go back and give them that confidence and you say, yeah, you're going in the right way, just keep going. and
Right.
and I saw like such a difference in people's like not ability, their willingness to keep
Yes.
going, like exactly the things you just said.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
such a simple thing to do,
It is.
but it made a huge difference.
It is. And that's the approach that I take with working with clients is it's not a you have to stop doing all the way stop doing what you're doing and use my method. No, no, no. Let's look at what you have. And I encourage entrepreneurs when you're thinking about your training system, don't look to getting a new LMS, a learning management system, or an AI. Like, look at what you already have. How are you conveying that message to those that you want to use it? And to your point, you may not be giving them the feedback that they need. And that might be, as you identified, that could be the simple shift that will turn it around. And so, thinking about training your teams in small chunks of change, and it's those small, the cumulative effect of those small changes will make a huge impact. They really will. And when we think about it from a systems perspective, it makes it easier for you as the facilitator. And so I'll share this quick story. When I started a second career as a faculty member, so I left being a clinician and was becoming a faculty member. At that time, I was also doing more business related workshops. I thought that it was the more I share information, I just need to talk, right? And they'll get it. However, people that know me would say Carrie's relatively quiet. She has shy tendencies. She's actually not a big talker. And so there was always this tension that I was experiencing of having, I felt like, quote unquote, I had to be something that I wasn't, of talking. And one day, I really can't remember in this moment what caused the shift, but I realized I asked a question. I was in a workshop and I asked the audience a very thoughtful yet pointed question for them to reflect on, not to answer, but to reflect. And then I think I was just tired of talking. And so I just stood there. But I could see the wheels turning. And the response, once we started having an open dialogue, I realized this is richer than anything I've done before. And it's because I asked them a pointed, thoughtful question. And that's a practice, and has been like 15, 20 years ago. And so that's a practice that I use now. And when I'm training others who say, I don't want to get in, I'm not training my teams because I don't want to do it. I don't want to be in front of them. And I encourage people to think about who you are or reflect on who you are personally and use your innate skill sets to your advantage. And it will truly convey and it will support your learners. 100-fold, it will support your learners. And so I do. I love great conversation, but when I need people to learn a skill set or understand a concept so that they change how they think and do, I'm asking more thoughtful questions than I am conveying information.
And just leading into that, like, do you feel it's that that's the important thing, or to be who you are, to be yourself, and to lead into your personal superpowers? Like for you, you found that like the asking the pointed questions and having the reflection that work for you. Does that work for everybody, or is it more about finding your own style that you're comfortable with and brings the best of you, or a
Yeah.
little bit of both?
Yeah. Yeah. I would say it's and. So let's talk about the learner first. So when we think about the learner, when people are listening to someone talk, they are listening, meaning they are actively processing information. And so at any point, you could use a word, a phrase, a reference that they don't understand, and it interrupts their process of information and ultimately their comprehension. And so they're like one step behind in understanding. And so when you ask them a question and then pause, right? I'll be comfortable with silence. It gives them an opportunity to fully process through. They're not playing catch up in the moment. And that's when they can identify, I don't understand X, Y, and Z, or I understand X, Y, and Z. It all makes sense, but I want to circle back to A, B, and C. That reinforces their comprehension. So that's the learner. As the facilitator, I love listening to people's stories. I am highly inquisitive. And so for me, asking the question supports the learner, but it also feeds my inquisitiveness because I'm okay with silence. And so I recognize that by people not saying anything, they're thinking through it. And I know if I just keep waiting, what they will give me in return, it will feed me as well. And so it becomes this beneficial back and forth. But for people who are the extroverts and love to engage in like to talk ultimately, I encourage those people to not change who you are, but recognize your learner still needs time. They need the time to understand what it is that you're talking about.
Yeah, I love that. Now and again, I remember, I wouldn't say I'm an extrovert, but having a ADHD mindset,
Yeah.
I sometimes find it hard to just stop and to listen and to
Mhm.
reflect in the moment.
Yeah.
And I've worked with a couple of brilliant coaches over the years, not particularly to help me with that, but just I've helped through the meta learning of watching how brilliant they are at doing what
Yeah.
they do, as in,
Yeah.
taking the audience, but at the speed that that audience needs to go, exactly what he's describing now. And and one coach in particular I'm working with at the moment, like we can sit in a meeting, a group call, and we can be silent, waiting for the person to respond for minutes. And at first, I was like cringe, like just sat there, like, oh, someone say something. I'm gonna have to say, and it's nothing to do with me. I can't, I can't. I was
Right.
like, just go.
Right.
And now I'm just like totally comfortable with it. And the
Yeah.
reason I say that is because if you're trying to take away some brilliant lessons from, what Carrie's saying here, that I think from my own experience and from working as a doctor and working with patients and explaining difficult diagnoses or whatever it is to them, it's all about the time. It's all about giving them space to assimilate and to understand.
Yeah.
But it can feel really uncomfortable.
It
And
can. It
and
can.
I'll tell
Yes.
you, sorry to talk. I'm going to know cut off, but any of my clients listening to this now, they know I have my moments where I just fail miserably at this. I just go, and I don't realize I just talk for like 10 minutes without stopping. I still do it, and one reason I'm saying this is a big thing is because it will feel uncomfortable,
Mhm, mhm.
but it's also massively valuable. That's all I wanted to say.
It is. And You know, it isn't. It can be uncomfortable. I've worked with business owners and CEOs who really struggled with that. And it simply takes practice. Um, but for individuals who consider themselves or have a desire to mentor others, to mentor people on their team, I encourage you to consider the silence in your mentoring relationship, because if you are consistently talking under the guise of I'm mentoring them, you're ultimately not providing them an opportunity to grow, or you're not providing them an opportunity to seek your wisdom because you're constantly talking. Or and it comes across as talking, but it may be in your mind that I'm sharing, I'm offering wisdom, I'm guiding. But at some point, let's say you've got 15 minutes and you've been on it for 14 of those 15, that doesn't provide the person who wants to learn from you. It only gives them 1 minute to ask the thing that is really important to them, whether it's important in the moment, it's something that keeps them up at night, or that they're wrestling with. And so, yes, it can, for some, the silence can be uncomfortable, but it is such a valuable gift. It is really a valuable gift. And if you think about it like that, my prayer is that it gets easier to do.
And from my experience, it does. Um, just before I move on slightly, I just wanted to again talk into that, because what you just said then about giving people the space and the silence is like one of the most effective ways I think that we've adapted into the company of building trust and rapport with our team. So when I'm doing one-to-ones with any of my team members, is something from a guy called Mark Horstman, who wrote a book called The Effective Manager. And in that, he talks about the one-on-one meeting, or the
Yeah.
I can't remember the exact word he uses. And he splits it into three, and it's 10, 10, 10. And the first 10 minutes is for your staff member, for your direct, as he calls them. And that is like, so every time I start my one-to-ones, I say, over to you, and I close my mouth.
Mhm.
And like that at
Yep.
first was uncomfortable. And now it gets always just a little smile because I said exactly the same thing every time, doing it for years. And then bang, you find out what's actually on somebody's mind.
Yeah.
So really
And it guides
simple
you.
framework to do it. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It guides you. One of the things I remember once I was having a facilitating a workshop, and I started with my agenda, and I chose this in particular time, like 1 minute in, I said, no, let me not do this. Let me ask them what's going on, what are you thinking? It was a really small group. And they started to tell me or started to share, and immediately I shifted my agenda. So the issues that they brought to the table, they were generally consistent with what I was going to cover. However, the angle, the perspective, they set me up for success so that I could set them up for success ultimately. And so I had not heard of the 333 or the 10-10-10 meeting approach, but it is, like you said, it's the same approach. When you make it about the other person first, it becomes far more valuable, not only to them, but to you as well.
Yeah. Amazing. So the other thing that I want to pick up on it is the story element. And as you were saying that, like teaching through stories, sharing what the experiences you've had, and you said you love that. I think just as humans, like we are programmed to listen, to engage with, and to remember stories, because that's how historically information was passed before well, apparently I wasn't around, but apparently information was passed before we started writing things down, etc.
Right.
And so it's like just a part of our genetics, part of our who we are. And as you were saying that, I was actually just going through my mind a few of the best business books I've ever read. And I was trying to remember anything in those business books that wasn't directly linked to a story when it was told. And I was struggling. And Mark Horstman, that example was probably the only one I could actually think of because it was totally relevant to this. So that's why I've remembered about it. But I was
Yeah.
thinking of a few other books I've read. I was like, every piece of information I seem to remember from those books, all the stuff that just came to me was in the format of them telling the story that they learned it. And as we said,
Yeah.
we were talking about this before we came on. It's like when I nearly everything I teach, a lot of the frameworks I teach now, the roots are in the stories of the experience of when I learn about it in medicine or whatever. And I think that's how we learn stuff. So sharing it in the same way, it makes sense. Yeah.
It does. It does. And there is a cognitive component of it. And so there's a part of the brain that attaches as we are thinking about understanding something, there's an emotional element to it. And as we are having our first experience with something, there is an emotional imprint. And so the meaning that we make of that experience is closely attached to the emotion. And so that is why nothing against the Catholic Church. I went to Catholic school as a child and I had nuns as educators, and in my math class, I got the ruler to the knuckles because I got something wrong. And to this day, like math just makes me crazy, right? And a level of anxiety. And so I say that because there's that emotional element to it. And that's the meaning that we make of it. So if we fast forward from formative years and developing an understanding of a concept as adults, we have multiple experiences around a particular concept and our the meaning that we've made of it. And so that then becomes our default. And so that's why when we're reading a story or we're hearing a story to teach us a lesson, we're thinking about what other stories have I experienced that are similar to this? Oh, this one in particular resonates. I've been there, I've made that mistake as well in business. And so I'm going to clue in, and it feels really close to me. And I'm really going to draw from what they're sharing. So the power of stories is great. The danger of story is if you are sharing a story that the person who's the learner has no point of reference, if they have a completely disassociated experience with that same story, um, and really it's they have no frame of reference. And so that's why I say when you are starting a workshop, if you ask them, hey, what's your experience with X, Y, and Z, you're ultimately hearing their story, and others in the room can hear their story. And so you build this level of interest, or you reveal a level of a shared frustration. Like that's the story that you have to address. So stories, they play a critical role, and it you can look at it from a very critical perspective, I'll say. Yeah.
I can see how, yeah, live workshops like that, any situation where you can get feedback, whether it's verbally or just visibly, but watching what people's reaction is.
Yes, yes.
Um, but how does it work with asynchronous training? How most of my training I do, whether it's with my staff or with my, when I'm here like, teaching how to do something rather than the coaching, mentoring part of it, because I do both. The how-to part, the guiding people through, I still want them to connect with what I'm teaching them. I want them to connect with the benefit of doing it this way, or
Right.
applying this framework or whatever. Like, how do you de-risk
Yeah.
including the wrong story now, or
Yeah.
like how do you have an approach to that has
Yeah.
worked?
Yeah. That's a great question. And what I would offer is when you are in person and you've got a fair amount of time, you can embellish the story, right? You tell the story, but you tell particular details. When it is an asynchronous experience, a couple things that you can do. One is you can shorten the story to really key elements, right? Because you'll lose them if you're starting to embellish and include multiple details. So that's the first thing. A second thing that you can do that actually should be the first thing is understand who the consumer is going to be and then provide stories that can be transferred across them. So let's say you have four distinctly different people. So you have two product-based businesses and two service-based businesses, but each business is in a different industry. What you could do is provide a very short product-based story, a service-based story. If you have people living in different regions, right? So let's just say the northern and southern hemisphere, a northern hemisphere story, a southern hemisphere story, right? Like, so there are ways that you can curate the story so that it still drives home your message, but it draws in every person that is there. And that takes thought on the front end because when you make it about you then think, oh, this is the story I want to tell. But when you make it about the learner, you think, which story do I have will be the most impactful? So that's the difference. And I've used that approach, and that's what I encourage people to do. Shorten, but make sure that it's going to be meaningful to the audience.
Seamlessly goes straight into my next question, which is, not to put you on the spot, I'd love to know the story behind. We talked about, well, I've been reading, I should say, about some of the methods you have. So you have something called the ERA method, and I wanted to know what that is and what the story behind it is to help people to understand it and to remember it. I
Yeah.
hope I haven't put you on the spot.
Yes and no. So no one's ever asked me the story behind it. And that's where I'm like, oh, well, what is the story? So the story.
So, what is the ERA framework? If I don't mind, just
Yes, that is the
take people. Yeah.
easier one. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So ERA is engagement, retention, actively engaging your audience in a meaningful way, supporting them in retaining the information, and then accurately applying the information. So engagement, retention, application. And we've already had a discussion about ways to engage them. So you want to start with the person, um, making sure that you are using a learner-centered approach. That's the engagement piece. When we look at retention, there are multiple ways to support learning comprehension and then their remembering of the information. So it's looking at, Bloom's taxonomy. I cannot take credit for that, but Bloom's taxonomy for an entrepreneur that doesn't have a education or learning background, that's a great resource. So start with very general information that can be easily remembered and pieced together. And then you deepen the concept and the content for critical thinking in particular, but also embedding ways to help people remember those things. And then we also talked about application. And so the critical part with the application, it's the bridge between retention and getting them to do it, is the confidence piece. And that's an element that I've added in the last year. I've always focused on the application piece, but I realized, like, well, what can get someone, or what can support a learner to getting to the application? And it's building their confidence, because we do the things that we're confident in. I watch the History Channel all the time. I love learning about building bridges and huge construction. No one wants me to build a bridge. No one wants me to build a building for them, because I haven't applied those skills. But the story behind it is that I sat through a mandated sexual harassment training at one point. One organization I was working for, there were about 200 people in the audience, and it was over 15 years ago. People were sleeping, employees were sleeping during this training as well. I was a participant, or an attendee, I should say. And it was clear the organization spent a couple $1,000s on this one day event. However, that organization was also at the same time in public litigation around sexual harassment. And what I realized multiple things. People are sleeping at something that is important and that was invested in. Is it possible that they don't understand what harassment is, let alone sexual harassment? And why are they not doing the thing that is being advocated here? And so much so that it's costing the organization hundreds of thousands in litigation. And that's what really prompted my journey, and along the way recognizing, like, well, why do trainings fail? Why is it that when I go on the online space, or I talk to HR professionals and I say the word training, everyone rolls their eyes? Why is it that corporate budgets, they cut the training budget first before anything else? And it's because there's a lack of understanding how to do it effectively, and the value that it offers. And then I started teasing it out. Well, how can we, if the goal is to get someone to do something, we have to reverse engineer it. And what should be the first step? And the first step isn't, let's develop a training. The first step is, who are the people? What do they need? Why do they need it? And keeping them central to the experience and to the story. It's just like in healthcare and in medicine. We don't build a well, I shouldn't say we don't build a cure. I've never built a cure, but like, we don't build equipment and medications and then look for people to backfill it, to use those things. We talk to patients and families of patients to say, what is the symptom, and what is the root cause of this symptom? What can we do to alleviate the symptoms so that it's not as painful, or that they can function to some degree, but we also need to address the cause. And so that has been, I guess that's my story around how it developed. But it's I have used the ERA method for a number of years now, and it has consistently proven to be an effective way to support businesses.
Yeah, I love it. I
Yeah.
knew there would be a story in there somewhere. And just listening to you saying that, and I want to just bring this up because a lot of people I work with, people listen to this podcast, they may not have formal employees. And often I have heard conversations about working with contractors and
Yeah.
like the challenges that people face by getting people to do stuff, or lack or knowledge gaps in things. And
Yeah.
one of the things that I try to advocate and live by is about providing training for whoever is working with you, even if
Absolutely.
it's in some way, shape, or form. You think, oh, it shouldn't be my responsibility. But ultimately, the way I see it is like if we want someone to perform at a level higher than they currently are, we can just hope for the best that they're going to just take it on their initiative and do it in the spare time, or we can be a part of the solution. And
Absolutely.
and so that's like just thinking about looking at the person, like how do we help that person? And these one-to-ones I mentioned before is the moment I get that time to actually find out. It's away from work, it's away from delegating more responsibility or listening to problems that have come up. And that does happen. They do bring up problems within those meetings, but actually it's a dedicated time to be able to have these conversations you're talking about, to be able to
Yeah.
dig into and find out what is it that you actually need. And like
Yeah.
one of my staff recently, we were talking about we've been working a lot on this podcast about, so we basically chopped the time it takes to produce and publish this podcast by 50%, actually by 54%, I think now,
Wow.
something like that, which is amazing. And over about a month, and you introducing AI, but a lot of it was about re-educating and training the person doing it to understand, how to do it more efficiently or what needs to be done, doesn't done, etc.
Yeah.
One of the key things, it's a long segue, this one of the key things that helped her was me saying, what training are you doing at the moment? And if I haven't got time to do any training, I said, great, you don't work on Mondays anymore. You're
Yeah.
not allowed to do any work on Mondays.
Yeah.
Mondays is your deep work day from now on. No scheduled work. You're allowed to
Yes.
go and learn. You're allowed to go and build a system to help you to improve things, but you're not allowed to do any recurring work. And
Yeah.
then within that month, we chopped her workload down by, well, 20 hours a week. And so
Yeah.
she gained that and then some by having that one day to reinvest and learn and apply. So I just want to give a story to
Yeah.
to really emphasize how effective what you do can be if we just give people the opportunity to actually do it. And I could learn so much from working with you about how to do this better. But I definitely think I've got some good principles to come where I'm starting
Awesome.
from. So yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. I want to, one thing to your point, one thing I am compelled to share with your audience is that if you are a solopreneur or you're just getting started, I encourage you to document everything, any and every step that you take. What is the process, or yeah, what are the steps that you take to make a decision for paying bills or whatever it is that you do in your business? Document it. And it doesn't have to be this beautifully designed document. It can be a basic Word document. You click, to make it even easier, click the microphone, and just record yourself speaking and capture it. Because if you have a contractor, you can say, these are my notes. This is what I need you to do. The other thing is, what is your goal? What are you striving toward by doing a thing? And so if you know you want to train someone, you can't simply say, I want to train them, or I want them to train themselves, like gain some training. There has to be an objective there. And so when that objective is clear, it puts them on a straight and forward path. And so for you, I'm sure you had a clear objective by asking her that question. And when, having that in mind and asking the question and giving her the autonomy to learn what she deems important, put her on the straight path. And so it's a great story in terms of the power of training. But I wanted to provide some background for people in terms of, well, why do you do that? What you did? It is incredibly important.
Yeah, totally. And I love that. Getting stuff out of your head,
Yeah.
and people think it's got to be some the biggest. I'll tell you this place, one of the biggest obstacles I see many of my clients facing is this idea that they have to know it like to the nth degree. It has to be
Yeah.
polished before they record it or delegate it or whatever. And it is the thing that held me back the most for the longest time, for almost 2 decades of working for myself and being a solopreneur through medical school, running a business on the side. And it was
Oh,
this inability to delegate because I thought it's not ready.
yeah,
And I think it comes from this teaching of you when you look at most educational, so business development type consulting, they're all talking about like doing it, growing it, revenue, like, and then at some point they introduce this word systems,
yeah,
and it's never at the beginning. It's never what
never.
you just said.
Yeah,
It's never the day one stuff. It's like literally today I'm going to pay a bill. I'm probably not going to be able to give this to somebody for a while, if ever, but I'm
yeah,
still going to start actually documenting these processes, these thought process or whatever. And it's the
yeah,
skill that you learn from doing it. Like you were saying before, it's the application of the skill. So
absolutely.
whether it's teaching somebody or getting stuff out of your head, like if you don't do it every day, when you need to do it, you've got to start all over. You've got to start from scratch.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so whatever it is, and like when for me, like when we're trying to get our staff to be brilliant at something, we don't go and say, go away, go on a 6 week training program, don't do any work, come back after 6 weeks, and then we'll see what you can do.
Yeah.
It's like go away, do something, try it. If it doesn't work, that's fine. We'll figure it out and move forward. It's like
Right.
Poke the Box by Seth Godin, great book, like about just having a go, having a go. What works, that doesn't work, try something else.
Right.
So
You
yeah,
have to. You have to. And, I've been a training development specialist, educator, all of those things for almost 30 years. Running a business is new. Like that is not something I have a long history doing. And so there were early days, there were times when I wasn't documenting what I was doing. And to your point, it would sit because I didn't need it at that moment. Months later, I'm like, oh, crap, I gotta start this over again. But once I started documenting, it also helps make things not only your workflow easier, but the level of stress that you have as an entrepreneur. It really makes things easier when you can say, hey, I already have that documented somewhere. And it simply becomes a part of your overall system.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's the headspace thing as well. It's like you've put it down somewhere so you can forget it. And for me, like I learned this in like one of my first businesses was doing student lets. I've got property in the UK, and so it's an annual turnover. And I used to do
Yeah.
everything myself, all the advertising, lettings, the paperwork, everything. But it was once every 12 months, and I've got the worst memory of anybody I've ever met. So I struggle to remember what I did yesterday or last week is hopeless, let alone 12 months ago. And so every year I was basically learning it all over again until I started actually start creating my first, what I now know were SOPs or
Right.
operation manuals. And I was writing them for myself, my own checklists, my own little videos, my own little guides and screenshots. And
Mhm.
then it became more and more efficient, like, but for me. And it was years later before I realized I could use them to help other people learn how to do stuff. But I'm a slow learner in some respects. But it was
Same,
but it
same.
was still the skill set that I learned to solve my biggest problems is the one that I help other people to apply now, but also it's the thing that helps other people to learn like as well. So
Yeah. 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 It is, it's learning. You were learning how to be a better business owner. I was learning how to be a better business learner. And so business owner. And so it never goes away, but it's simply what is the meaning that you've attached to the word training? And when you shift the meaning of it, just shift the meaning of whatever that thing is that you don't enjoy doing, so to speak. It will actually provide you with a larger perspective that's actually more accurate.
yeah, love
Yeah.
it, brilliant. And what one of the so like, you've convinced me. I didn't need much convincing, but you've convinced me anyway of the importance of doing it. You've given me some amazing guides and techniques and things to try for actually how you do it. But like, and we have touched on this a little bit, but maybe it's just worth like explaining like what are the actual benefits of doing this? Like if somebody's listening to this now and they go, I've really pulled away from this, but I'm inspired by this episode. but and they've still got this, whatever that barrier, that blocker is, like what can you tell them to explain, like this is the result you're going to get by applying or having a go and doing this.
Yeah. So if you have and you can consider the ERA method as your training system. Okay. So that's the first thing. So you can then say, I have a training system in place. So what that should do is it should lower your level of stress and anxiety around training your teams. Now, if you want to live in a world of stress and anxiety as a business owner, you forget everything that we've talked about today. But that is one thing that it can do for you. Also, and most importantly, is you will have teams that feel like you've invested in them. So while they will feel that way because you've taken the time to tailor the training toward them and what their needs are, while they feel that way, the evidence, because you can't make business decisions on feelings, the evidence is you will have an increase in production if you are a product-based business. You will have an increase in service outcomes and whatever your service outcomes are. Steve, as you identified with, the woman that does your podcast, not only do you have an increase in service outcomes, you can have a decrease in time expenditure. And time ultimately is money. And so if you are hiring a contractor and you don't take the time to train them appropriately, you're going to spend more time, more money, because it's going to take them longer to do the job. If you take the 1 hour to train them effectively on the thing that you want them to do, you're going to get a better outcome from them. So better service outcomes, but you will lessen. There's an argument that you'll decrease the amount of money, cost waste, let's call it that, cost waste. So if you're looking for a reclaiming of your time and getting time back or time to devote to something else, like that's a benefit. Revenue, it will help with revenue generation as well as savings and profit development. That's something. If you're thinking about it from a personal wellness, it will help you with your stress in particular, and it will give you time to come up with better ideas to grow your business ultimately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then some.
And then some, and
Yeah,
then
absolutely.
some. And
And one of the things you when you were speaking, then you're talking about Von, who's does the podcast stuff. One of her pushbacks to the training and the work was that we had this target of getting back into the top 3% of global podcasts, and because we dipped down to top 5% for a couple of months, and so she'd been working on all this stuff, and that was her focus. She had this metric that she was focusing on. So what goals before, and it's like pushing for that, for that, for that, for that, and she lost sight of the fact that by focusing on that one thing, she'd not taken into account the time and then the loss of opportunity for not being able to do other stuff, which might actually be beneficial to get into that target. So it's just
yeah,
trying to sort of getting herself onto a hamster wheel, just doing and doing and doing and doing. And it was only on this when we reflected on it, and that's okay. Let's look at the metrics. Let's look at the downloads. Look at the site visits. Look at the interaction. Look at the leads generated. Like, what are the metrics saying for all the hard work you're putting in? And it was only when we looked at that, and I hold my hands up, I should have been more attentive to this, over those preceding months. We looked at it, and actually there'd been a decrease in most of those metrics over the time. And
yeah,
so I just went, right, now we've got the baseline. Let's
yeah,
do the like not the minimum possible. Let's do the most efficient possible and
yeah.
keep an eye on the metrics and see what changes. The next week, and this serendipitous, I don't think it was the fact that is the next week we were in the top 3% again and have stayed there. But I don't think it was just me, but me saying, like, the universal energy and quantum and all the rest of it, me just focusing on the metrics and saying we need to be more goal driven, metric driven, bang. I was rewarded for my attention to the details, and we got
Right.
back in the top three.
Right. But you have to have an out, like a
Yeah.
goal. What is the goal? And when people don't, when business owners or business leaders don't have a crystal clear goal, that's where it gets cloudy. That's where and you kind of get stuck. Oh, you get stuck as the business leader, but everyone who you are trying to move forward also, they get stuck as well. Yeah.
And maybe in that case, like it was probably the wrong goal. It felt like the right goal, but it was actually probably the wrong way to approach it to get the result we were actually looking for. So it was having the courage to say, okay, let's scrap that goal,
Yeah.
completely shift the attention to ultimately get back to that goal at some point in the future, and bang. So anyway,
Yeah. Yeah. That's a
Carrie,
hard one though. Let me just
yeah,
say, Steve,
yeah,
what
yeah,
that last point that you made, I think is as hard as being okay with silence, right? Because you've become so attached to a goal,
yeah,
and it means, quote unquote, means so much. We've placed value on it,
yeah.
and to say, no, let's scrap it. Let's try something else. That can be very uncomfortable. It is, in fact, the right thing to do, but it can be very uncomfortable.
Yeah. It,
Yeah.
it it was easier for me, much easier for me as a business owner to let go of that goal than it was for her who put all the time and effort and whatever to making it happen, and for me to pull it from under before she reached it. And
Yep.
thankfully, literally, that's what I say, it's such an amazing. Like we looked at it in this conversation, and I just happened to spot. I was like, hold on a minute, that says three, not five. And we looked at the back end, and like, oh my god, we're back in 3%. It was just honestly,
That's
I
awesome.
was almost crying because it was just like just incredible.
Yes.
Carrie, I could genuinely, and I've said this a few times on this podcast, but I could genuinely just sit and chat to you all day about this stuff, and I would not get bored, and I would keep on learning. So I will continue this conversation with you. I hope in the future. I'd
Yeah.
love to have you back on the podcast at some point, and I would love to continue this conversation, after the fact. But for now, I do feel we need to bring it to a close,
Yes.
so people can get on with their days as well. And so before we do go, first of all, I want to just mention you shared a quiz with me, which I did, as I said before. I can't. It only takes about 3 minutes to do, 4 or 5 minutes maximum, and it was very insightful. And that's what actually made me realize that we have a very similar vision and mission in terms of how we help people, because you're leading into the same challenges. So I encourage anyone listening to this to do that training. Sorry, to do that quiz, which is all
Yeah.
about training. It's all about like how do you approach it and like how good is it? It was, I say, quick and easy to do, and actually very useful. The URL for that is it just the one you gave me? I just want to give the right one
Yep.
on the website. Yeah, so it's drcarriegraham.com.
Yep.
It's take training assessment quiz.
Yeah. And it's right there.
Yeah, I think you can just do assessment quiz.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you can.
That's the tech stuff. I
Because I've just gone there, and it's taken to me the right place. So drcarriegraham.com/assessment quiz. Obviously, that link will be in our show notes as well. But if people want to reach out to you directly or learn more about what you do and how you help people or how to get in touch, what's the best place for them to come and find you?
I would say the website, for people that like something static, the drcarriegraham.com is the best place to go. But if you enjoy lively conversation and you want to ask in live time, LinkedIn is where I spend my social media time, and it is a wonderful place to have conversations that matter to you.
Fantastic. And before you go, I have one final question for you.
Yes.
The name of this podcast is Systemize Your Success, but what does success mean to you and why?
Success to me is a point when I have peace. And it is peace of mind and peace about the work that I'm doing and the people that I'm helping, and peace in my home. And so I can be my true realist self. And I that's in the periods of my life where I felt I was successful, I had all of those things together at the same time. And that's the feeling that I seek on a daily basis, is to have that all-encompassing peace.
I resonate with that massively.
Yeah. Thank
Absolutely.
you for asking that question. Thank you.
Yeah. My part of my vision, the closing line of my vision is to live with more presence, purpose, and peace.
Yeah.
Because I've come to realize that above anything else, it used to be freedom, that last word. And before that was success. And
Yeah.
what I've come to realize above everything else that's important to me in my life, peace is the thing that I've spent my entire life striving to achieve. So I hear
Yeah.
you and I see you, and that's a wonderful, wonderful answer. And
Yeah.
the one I probably resonate with the most closely of any answer I've ever had to that question. So thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Carrie Graham, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. I encourage everyone who's listening to this to get in touch with Carrie if you're a small business owner and you need help in making your team better and finding more peace in your life. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Steve. I appreciate having me.